Both of my parents immigrated from Canada to the U.S. when they were teenagers. Growing up in Huntsville, Alabama, I was not aware of a lot of different diversities or children of immigrant parents. However, when I came to SCU, a ton of my friends had immigrant parents just like me. Here's a glimpse into the lives of Fana Johannes and Vicky Nguyen as they juggle cultures.
Because they were literally raised like in, well, I don't want to be stereotypical, but like literally like grass huts and like mud huts and stuff. So it's very, and even now like it's very rural.
They lived in Vietnam. They did their thing. They both had pretty big families, is what I know, and that's about it.
My parents see it as that I have it easier than they did, so I should be able to succeed as well. So that's a lot of pressure. I think pressures to be successful, pressures to get good grades. It's very synonymous to the Asian parent stereotype almost, but I feel like almost all immigrant parents are put that pressure on their children to always be the best and always get the top grade.
The pressures that my parents put on me is probably like a little more intense than like the pressures of like a normal American child.
So when I was little, I actually lived in Eritrea for a year, and then having to get used to a private institution where kids often like question, okay, where did you come from? You came from Africa. Were you born there? Are there animals there? Is it like a zoo? Like that kind of stuff. I had to explain and defend my culture from a young age. So I think that's when I felt the most ostracized because I didn't feel the same. I didn't have the same upbringing as these other children.
When everyone around me started speaking English, and I was like, I can't really speak Asian in kindergarten, so that's usually, I think that's when the break happened. Going to my friends' houses when I was younger and seeing like how their families interacted kind of showed me like, oh, maybe you're a little different. Like maybe you don't speak to your parents as much, or you don't, have dinner with your parents like as other families do. So that's probably the one instance, or like the multiple instances where I noticed that like it was kind of different. Like in high school, some of my friends would be like, they'd be like joking around and stuff, but they'd say some like racial slurs and be like, okay, that kind of hits like a little closer to home than I thought it would.
My parents are very academia based, so like they want me to go get my master's, my PhD, and like continue education until I'm well into my 30s. But for me, I kind of am more. I don't know, like I like to go with like the business flow. So like I want to pursue different opportunities before going to go get my master's and maybe a JD or something.
When I was younger, it was like pretty problematic because I struggled like mixing what my parents wanted with like what I wanted. And like the American and like Asian cultures, but I feel like as I grew up, I kind of like got more used to it and got more accustomed to it.
It's an unwritten rule. It's like you're going to marry an Eritrean. Like, for example, my cousins or my friends that are dating like African American guys or guys that aren't Eritrean, it's just like, oh my gosh, what is she doing? I don't know if my parents would be open to the overall picture of like me marrying someone that's successful versus someone that's Eritrean, but I think it's a non-compromise situation. But it also depends on how long my parents are around, so we'll see here when I get married, so we'll see. I don't know. Honestly, like, if I had to pick anyone for my sister to marry, like, I would not have picked her husband. But in a state of kind of, like, appeasement, like, it's just kind of like, like, it is what it is. And I don't ever want to be complacent with something like that, so.
We don't celebrate birthdays at all, really. It's kind of just like a happy birthday, peace out. We don't celebrate very big holidays. We're not that close to each other, I don't think. So when I was younger, we used to see like Christmas trees and like big celebrations, and then it got to the point where like me and my brother and like my parents had just like, we didn't really spend a lot of time together, and so in terms of Christmas, it was like we put up the tree every year and we would have like a dinner or two, but like it wasn't that big of a deal. And I think right now it's still not that big of a deal. It's just like a good time to, come home from school and hang out, so. We kind of have like a silent affection kind of thing, so we don't really like say affectionate things to each other, but I just kind of know that they'll be there like if I ever needed anything.
The harder part is kind of adapting to my generation of fellow Eritreans and how they also have assimilated so much into American culture that they're forgetting our background. Because of like media and different perceptions, like the culture is changing a lot. Younger generations are watching movies and different TV shows that are imported from America, so they kind of get this kind of, you know, twisted fantasy almost of like, I want to be like an American, so I'm gonna like dye my hair or get tattoos and stuff. And I think that's kind of causing a rift between two generations and two different cultures, because, you know, in 20, 30 years, 40 years even, when our parents are kind of gone, like, we are the ones that carry the traditions. But the way that things are going now, so many kids that are children of immigrant parents are focused on belonging to American culture, and I feel like a lot of our history is kind of lost in that.
They only speak to me in Asian and I only speak to them in English, so it's kind of like you can directly see like how that's different.
I definitely feel like I want to be more in the know with my children.
Like, I want to be closer to my children, and I think like the problem was that my parents and I had like a huge language barrier, and so we didn't really get to know each other very well, because I feel like that's kind of a huge reason why we don't get along very well, or like we don't talk to each other that much, just because like we don't come from the same places, because obviously like my parents had immigrated here and I like grew up here, so it's like we're pretty different people.
I spoke with Professor Ramon Chacon about his experience growing up as a child of immigrant parents and what effects it has later in life.
America, what does being American mean? What does it mean? Everybody has a identification of that. So, you know, Americanization or assimilation, there is some. You know, higher education will do that to you. But at the same time, you maintain your culture and you try to maintain your language as you're being kind of assimilated. So in many ways I see myself as three-dimensional. Who am I? This guy assimilated, Stanford PhD. This guy is mixed, grew up in the hood. Or this guy who sometimes would be more traditional. So Americanization has been around a long time, but see, some people fear that those Latinos or Mexican, whatever, when they give up their culture, they're selling out. A lot of Mexican people have lost their language, especially the third generation, especially. I can't say that my parents knew much about what I was doing in school. They just wanted me to attend and don't get in trouble. You're not going to spend all your life with your parents, you're going to have other times out here. But the values that your parents taught you should stay. Well, if they feel they're detached, they're going to try to distance themselves from that and go for the American way of life.
Giving up your identity or compromising your identity to adhere to the values and adapt the values of American culture.
You kind of like assimilate from your like home culture to, I guess, like the area that you're now in. And I'd say like in America, I mean, people talk in their families a little more. They communicate a little better. They have like better relationships and stuff. So
I definitely think that the balance between my culture and assimilation, it's almost like a double-edged sword.
well, in terms, I don't know if this is something that I could like personally change, but I just like wish that, like I said before, that barrier wasn't there in terms of like our cultural differences. So I don't really know what could be done, but like it'd be nice if something was done in terms of like us, you know, having like a close relationship as a family, I suppose.